Nicki and I'm from South Africa. We're in Hongdae in South Korea, and we're busy chatting to the local foreigners to find out what they like or dislike and find very challenging about being in South Korea. And tell me, what have you found that most challenging or something you dislike about being in Korea?
I think one of the most challenging things is to be able to speak English with some Koreans. It's a bit hard if you don't speak a lot of the language to make yourself understood and to navigate through Korea. And yeah, that's the most challenging thing, I guess.
I think personally one of the things that are most challenging for me is when I have to register somewhere online, for example in Korea. Oftentimes I can't even enter my name or I can't use some online services as a foreigner because I don't have the ID.
I think trying to use the language, it's a bit intimidating. You're trying to order in Korean or ask for things. Like, we're so excited to speak the language and talk to people, but you get so nervous to mess it up or do something wrong.
Yeah, I'm pretty much saying just knowing exactly what to say and what's like the best way to say it without getting a language barrier in between. It has been probably the most difficult, but we're learning, so only up from here, I guess. So yeah.
So sometimes the language barrier can be noticeable. It's hard to find things that are in English, and the people are friendly, but it's definitely hard to make some connections just because there is that cultural difference that is present. Yeah.
For me, it's cultural difference. Although I'm from Asia, I'm from Singapore, but there's still very difference with the Koreans, and you have to really break into their cycle to be friends with them. It takes a while, but it's hard, and also the language barrier. I guess that's one of the main difficulties I have here. Yeah.
Navigating Google Maps because they don't work, so we have to use Naver, which is a quite difficult app, and I think that's it.
Absolutely, I agree because I travel with she, and traveling by Google Maps is not easy. But we have Kakao Map, and it's okay.
I would say I wasn't used to it appears very cold here. Because back home, people would just come up to you and chat to you. So I think connecting with people was a big challenge for me. So I think that would be my main problem.
I would say the language barrier because I cannot speak Korean, but I'm trying to learn it. But most of the older people cannot speak English, so it's kind of difficult.
I would say the language too. I can speak conversational level, but because of my accent and everything, they can't really understand. And also racial issues because I'm a little tan, so because of that I do face some discrimination. Yeah.
Find the maps kind of challenging sometimes just because Google Maps doesn't really work here, and then Naver Maps is all in Korean, so kind of translating it back and forth can be challenging sometimes, but I found just going into the city and wandering around, you can figure pretty much anything out and everyone's so helpful and friendly, but probably the maps, yeah.
The contextual answer is the hierarchy within the the corporate structure and the hierarchy, yeah.
I think how intense the language barrier can feel sometimes, even just I love connecting with people on the sidewalk and in everyday life, so having a barrier constantly is a bit of a challenge.
The cyber verification and internet accessibility is very difficult to navigate sometimes.
So I've only been here about 36 hours, so I'm sure I'll have a more informed response in a couple of months. But right now after my first 2 nights, the sorting of the trash, it's super intentional and deliberate here. And in the US, we are not as intentional. I know it's probably great for the environment. We should all adapt that practice, but it's been a little bit tricky so far.
Recently, I've been studying in Japan, pretty nearby, and I'm currently on holiday here. Particularly since I've been in Japan for a few months, the main differences I've noticed are the methods of travel. I think that, at least in Seoul, they're much more dependent on bus travel compared to train transit. And there's been some issues in terms of getting money to get across, or using ATMs and whatnot. I've had a lot more issues than what I expected, but in terms of overall, it's been a pretty pleasant experience so far. Haven't had too many problems. Enjoying the weather so far. I think people are generally friendly and speak better English than what you'd expect for some other places in East Asia, but it's been a pretty good experience so far.
Probably the language barrier. I think it's okay for the most part, but whenever you have a problem or want to specify something, it gets a little harder.
Yeah, I would just say the subway systems. Yeah, those are really hard. I have to use that. The app is helpful, but I'm on a good sense of direction, so it's just difficult.
One of the most challenging things is definitely the language barrier if you don't live in Seoul. I spent a year in a rural area in Korea, and most people don't speak English at all, but that's fine because I don't expect them to. So I've been learning Korean, but it's still difficult sometimes to communicate.
Yeah, I'm going to chime in. I totally agree with my friend here. I've been here for only just a week, and despite being in a capital city, I feel like the language is still something I have to learn, and it can be a barrier for anyone who doesn't really speak Korean, and it's not an easy language to learn, so of course, yeah, that's definitely the most challenging thing for me. Yeah.
I think only difficult things here I faced is language. Sometimes like it's gonna be so hard communicating with some, but it's going good until now. Yeah, but not everyone can speak fluent, so it's gonna be hard a bit. Exactly.
The most challenging thing is, I guess, communication. It's sometimes hard to find people who understand you if you're not fluent in the Korean language or if you don't know particular words. Sometimes it's hard to communicate, but in general it's nice. Oh, and it's sometimes hard to find places like because the most platforms you can use to find places are in Korean, so if you can't read it, obviously you can't find it. Yeah.
Well, I hope it gets better for you.
Well, my friend can read Korean, so I'm actually in a really good place here. But when I was here 3.5 or 4 years ago, and I was alone because I just wanted to explore the world. And then I had a lot of hard times. But like Koreans are really, really nice. When you ask them and show them in Korean the language where you need to go, they try to most of the times in broken English to tell you where to go. So, I mean, it's difficult, but it's okay.
Well, I hope it gets better.
Thank you very much.
Bye. See.